Hello and welcome to the World Wanderers podcast. I'm Ryan.
I'm Amanda, and we're your hosts.
Yes, and this is take 3 of the podcast intro.
Not going so well this morning, but that's okay.
About to get a lot better.
Best one yet.
Today we're talking about traveling, as always. Specifically, a kind of about New Year's resolutions and why we think that you should make a resolution to go somewhere new, do something big and drastic instead of going to the gym more or flossing.
Or eating healthy.
You should floss too, but
I know that was a good resolution. I said in one of our previous takes, which you listeners out there will never hear because we deleted it, that one year I decided to floss. And I actually did it for like 8 months. Mm-hmm. It's good. My teeth loved me for it.
Did they?
Yeah.
So most people who are making New Year's resolutions are focused on kind of tweaking, would you say?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's, or at least for me, from my experience, it's like, I feel a little bit unsettled. I kind of want something to change. I'm not completely happy with myself or where I'm at in my life. And it's like, oh, what could I do that this year that could make me feel better about myself and where I'm at, where I'm going?
Is that what you think the motivation to set resolutions is? Or is it just because everyone else is settling New Year's resolutions?
I think it's a little of both. I think a lot of it is unconscious. I think it's, everybody else is doing this. I should do this too. I should set this resolution. I should work to be healthier type thing. I think though, if you're a high self-esteem person with a lot of confidence in yourself, you'd be sort of like, F you guys, I don't need that. I'm happy with myself. Does that sort of make sense? So I think it's a combination.
So I think someone with a high sense of self-esteem would be pretty humble about the fact that they don't know a lot of stuff, that they're not good at a lot of stuff. And I think that kind of takes on a quality of wanting to learn and grow and improve yourself, whereas like a more of a low self-esteem viewpoint would be overconfidence, overconfidence in what you know, lack of confidence in your ability to learn something new. And maybe when you are setting resolutions, it's maybe more of a force thing, forcing yourself to do something.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I get that.
But I get what you're saying. Like maybe you're referring to you wanting to change a bunch of stuff, but what particular are you referring to?
I think it's this like sense of like, I want to make a change, and being like, if I exercised a few more times a week this year, maybe I'd be thinner or fitter, and then I'd feel physically better. So then I'd be happier. I feel like that's kind of the unconscious pattern in the mind. And I think that, people sometimes try to meet this need of unsettledness, uneasiness by changing something little, and it doesn't always seem to meet that need.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. So like most people, like whenever someone acts to do anything, it's because they're somewhat uneasy with the current state, can picture a better state, and can see a link between them acting to change that, or at least have a probability of changing to that more satisfactory.
Nailed it.
Thing.
Right there.
But a lot of people don't think about the fact that it's like, well, if you're like, I'm going to go to the gym more, that's an admission that you want some sort of more satisfactory state.
Yeah. And I think too, I'm definitely guilty of that over the years. It's, especially when we were working full time between 2012 and 2014, between our travels, it's, if I can do these little things like save a bit more money and eat a little bit healthier and work out a little bit more, then I'm going to feel better about myself. And I feel like for me, it was tough because I would try to do these things and it was like ramming my head into a wall because I'm like, why is this not improving my quality of life? Mm-hmm. Like I felt like I was trying to do these little things and it wasn't really changing like my mental state.
Were you succeeding at doing that?
Yeah, I mean, I saved money. I saved enough money to travel South America. I've exercised pretty regularly in the last year that we were in
But that wasn't
Canada.
really a New Year's resolution.
No, I guess not. I mean, to be honest, I'm not a huge believer in like New Year's resolution, quote unquote. I'm more of like, my philosophy was sort of, let's set like a lot of little goals and try to do those. So it was like, you know, run more and save more money. And I made a cute little look board for it, which is a great idea to get inspired. But I think it's cool to, you know, maybe add something to that list or that look board, or make your resolution something that could really change your life. Something that you've always been wanting to do.
Like, I think a lot of New Year's resolutions, and kind of what you were hinting at, is that people are really focused on maybe, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but like not substantial change. It's like, oh, I'm going to, if you're just, you know, tweaking these small things in your life, but not tweaking, reassessing and changing the major direction of your life, then you're going to keep heading in that same direction. And maybe people like, so from my personal experience, I at times, I was like really unhappy for the 2 years preceding to traveling in 2014. Not the entire time, but progressively getting like kind of worse and worse. And I had tried at times to exercise, and I didn't really set a New Year's resolution to do anything. But like trying all these like small things to try to make my life more enjoyable. And it did work at some points in time. Like, I was doing a lot more exercise at one point in time, and that made me feel better. But, I think for me, work and just not feeling like I have a sense of purpose and a sense of direction, and not feeling like I'm fulfilling my potential, was kind of at the core of dissatisfaction and kind of like almost depression, really.
Yeah, for sure. That definitely resonates with me. So you felt like you weren't happy with your job, you weren't doing something that you loved, and then you were trying to use like, oh, if I work out and like feel good in my physical self, then I'm going to feel better about my like day-to-day working situation. Is that sort of like your mental pathway?
Yeah, I guess, like, I don't recall what I was thinking, but it was like I was really longing for some form of like fulfillment, I guess, like some sort of a win, like, oh, I'm doing something well.
Yeah.
Like, oh, like I may not enjoy going into work at all. Like I may feel shitty about not like being able to succeed in that, but like, hey, I can go to the gym and be athletic.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I kind of feel like I did the same thing. It's like, oh, I go to work for 7-8 hours in a day. It's like, how can I make the most of the other 5 hours of the day that I'm up for? And it's like, I'm going to, you know, make a really healthy dinner. I'm going to make time to see a friend. I'm going to go to the gym, and that's going to make up for the fact that I don't like what I'm doing for the other 7-8 hours of the day. Mm-hmm.
But do you think that the work thing is like the core of the problem, or of the uneasiness?
I think,
like, do you think so? Like, I understand that changing small stuff and like making small resolutions, like that can lead to an improvement in your satisfaction with your life. But the kind of theme of this podcast was wanting to talk about like forgetting these little things and making like big changes, and actually like getting to a state where you feel happy with like not the entire thing, but like your general direction, feeling happy with.
Yeah, I think that for a lot of people, what you're doing, your job or your career path, is something that causes that uneasiness. And I'm not going to speak for everyone, but sometimes I feel like even people that I know that say that, oh yeah, like I really like my job, sometimes I get the feeling like, oh, but is there something else you could be doing that you'd really love? And I feel like it's really easy to normalize your situation. Like, oh yeah, you know, it's okay. Like, it could be worse. And I think we've said so many times on this podcast, like, that it could be worse at home is such a dangerous statement.
Yeah. And it's funny, even thinking about, like you're saying, everything becomes normal. Like, we perceive changes more so than states. Mm-hmm. So, like, you don't, I know even traveling, you kind of normalize what that's like. So I remember going back after traveling in 2011 to working for 2 years. And just, it was like, I felt like I longed to be traveling more, like this kind of state of like freedom in a way, even though like I definitely was free. I kind of boxed myself into this idea where I felt like I had to go to work, had to do all these things.
Yeah.
So I just kind of was like longing for this sense of freedom that I really didn't realize or appreciate I had in our first 6-month trip.
Yeah. Yeah. I was sort of the same way. It kind of almost like you feel caged in. And I think people always say like they crave the routine. And when they go on a vacation, they're like, oh, I want to get back to routine. And I easily get caught up in a routine, but I think I don't think routines are the greatest. I think it's good to have a lot of variety in your days and the things you do and the things you eat and everything. It's really good to switch it up because humans are creatures that innately want to learn, and we're curious. But it's when you do the same thing every day, you know, that spark for curiosity isn't there. I don't think.
Yeah, you kind of, when you're doing the same thing every day, you go on autopilot. Mm-hmm. Like, you actually use less of your brain. Every time you do an activity again, your brain works less and less at it because it becomes automated, which allows you to do it better and better and better if you're applying yourself to it. Or it just kind of allows you to not be really present with your life as it's going by.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of like, I don't think of traveling as like an end. It's like kind of a means to reassess your life.
Yeah, 100%.
Because you can pull out of, because like, so you're thinking as the year comes to the end, what can I do to make myself happier? And maybe like a lot of people are in situations they're in based off just a whole heap of momentum. Like, they're going through high school, who they think they are has kind of been dictated to them by their parents and by teachers. And maybe like a couple teachers they do well in those subjects. They think those subjects are somehow like inherently their thing. They go to university in one of those subjects. It's kind of the same process. Come out of university, find a career, maybe that's similar to their parents' career. And then you're in these jobs and you feel like you've got so much sunk cost leading you to this position you're in. And then you're making resolutions thinking about, oh, I should exercise more. I should go to like a social club more. So those are really small changes. Maybe it'd be better to stop and really think about the direction you're going in your life. Mm-hmm. And I think like, I don't want to think like, I don't know what direction I want to go in my life. But from a year ago, like this point a year ago, I was really, really unhappy. And now I feel like I do have at least a better conception of the place I want to go in my life. I'm in a position where obviously this isn't a sustainable state. So I'm kind of forced to look for a direction. And I just mean sustainable state, like working in the service industry, not something I want to be doing for very long.
Yeah, I feel you there for sure. Yeah, it's super interesting because I think there's a lot of like fear and anxiety around making a big change. You know, people work a job that they're maybe not that happy with and they're like, oh, but it's comfortable, like it's fine. And then it's kind of the mentality of like, oh, well, like they're all going to be the same. Mm-hmm. Like the next one's going to be just as bad. And it's just this, I don't know. I feel like it was kind of ingrained into me as a child. Like, you have to work to live. You have to like put your time in. You need to do crappy jobs to move your way up. And like, I really thought that until I don't know, a year ago. I was like, oh yeah, just got to put my time in. Like eventually I'll get to a place where I feel really happy. And it's like, I have a lot of really great qualities and I don't need to do.
Yeah. Well, that's like there's this whole model of, like I was listening to this YouTube clip and talking about how the whole model society is like preparation for something. It's preparation for something that never arrives. Like you go into kindergarten to prepare for grade 1, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, ding, 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 up to high school. Then high school, you prepare for university. University, you're preparing for real life. And then you get into real life and find out you're preparing for your promotion. And like all the way up this line, planning for the future, living in the future, but it's a future that never arrives, because when you do hit that future, you're still living in the future because that's your whole mode of thinking.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. It's hard not to, for me at least, it's hard not for me to live in the future. Like it's hard for me to just be in the present and be really okay with not thinking ahead. Like I always want to be like planning something else or like looking forward to something. And that's a big thing too that I've used to make myself happy, is planning something in the future and having that is like, okay, if I can just get to Saturday, I've got this really exciting thing happening, which is, that I'm missing out on Monday to Friday, living in the present moment because I'm just trying to get through it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's something I just found with work. Just like you initially start to dislike a day, and then that day you're like, okay, it'll be over soon. And then it like blends into this feeling of disliking your weeks, and like this living for the weekend thing is just like time just flies by and you're not enjoying your life at all.
Yeah, for sure. So it's kind of interesting. I mean, it's January 1st today. This time last year, we had 2 days of work left. We worked the 2nd and the 3rd. And for me, the 3rd was a pretty weird day. It was, saying goodbye to my coworkers, like, oh yeah, I'll see you in a few months type thing. And feeling sad that I was leaving this place that I'd been for 2 years, and really scared about the decision I made to quit, but also really excited for what was ahead of me. So just a lot of mixed emotions. How did you feel?
Definitely nervous. Mm-hmm. It's funny, like going into quitting my job, it was something I wanted to do. It was something I was like really terrified of. And it was like crazy how hard it was to do something like quit a job you really don't like.
Yeah.
It was a weird thing to experience because there's, for me at least, I was like so geared towards like trying to please other people that like disappointing someone is something that kind of scared me. I'm like, oh, what about like references in the future? Are they going to be angry if I quit? Which is kind of weird. It's like, I shouldn't quit because if I quit, that will make them upset and then not want to give me references in the future. I think that's terrible logic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a scary but exciting process to go through. And it's like, oh my God, this is happening.
It becomes so real, and I think I don't really like to believe in regrets, and I like to just learn lessons from things that I choose to do, even if it wasn't the best choice. But I definitely was like, oh, so many times in those few days before we left, I was like, is this the right decision? Am I doing the right thing? Because I feel like if my life was a hike, I came to a fork in the road and I took this not very trampled over path that had no signs and was kind of just like wandering aimlessly, not really sure where I was going.
You mean referring to quitting to go traveling?
Yeah.
It's like fairly trampled over.
Oh, I mean,
but like
it's
relative,
not as trampled over, like that's kind of veering off the path. I'm not going to say off the beaten path because I think it is beaten, but it's not, paved and marked. And
yeah. And it's not completely socially acceptable. And I think that's one thing, like a lot of people can really identify with feeling uneasiness in their current state. Like if you've just gotten out of university, gotten to a job, just been working the entire time, maybe don't really feel fulfilled in your job, don't feel like you're fulfilling your potential, dealing with all this like corporate politics stuff that you don't like, and hanging out with people all the time that you don't like, and not doing what you love to do. But what's holding you there and what making you perceive more of a like for that job is just the like idea that there isn't a more satisfactory state present somewhere else. So like I knew at times I was working not happy, but it's like, oh, any job I get is going to be like this. There's going to be problems, so I should just deal with these problems, because switching is just going to mean the same problems again, and then I'll have to put in the same time starting.
Yeah. And I think it's also like, oh, the problems, could be worse, or it's going to be uncomfortable. Like, at least I know the people here and I'm comfortable. I think there's definitely that mentality.
Me too, because I remember thinking about what it would look like on my resume, or what traveling would look like, because there's this idea that having a gap in your resume is a bad thing. But it's funny, my perspective has kind of changed, because the first time we went traveling, I was thinking about, oh, maybe it'll look bad having this gigantic travel gap, but I can like sell traveling after university. And then the second time, that was more of a concern for me. Like, now they're going to see 2 big travel gaps on my resume. Like, what are they going to think? I'm some sort of chronic traveler. They're not going to want to hire me. But then, so that was actually like a legitimate fear I had. Like, what kind of job can I get with my resume after this? Because when we went traveling, I think if I had to bet, I would have thought like, okay, go back to a city somewhere, try to get another office job in some sort of company, and just do the same thing. Versus now, I'm like, if someone saw gaps on my resume and didn't want to hire me, I wouldn't want to work there. Also, I probably don't want to be in a situation where I'm really using my resume anyways, unless it's like a couple of things that really interest me. Yeah,
definitely. I think it's really been ingrained into me, and probably you as well, and probably a lot of our listeners through university, and I think our parents as well, that you can't have a gap in your resume. It's like, if you don't have a gap, you've just worked, and I've taken this 6 months to a year off. How does it look? Like, you're obviously going to get that job. Yeah. I feel like that's sort of what was ingrained into my brain. So quitting a job was kind of scary in that sense. It's like, oh, am I going to come back and just not be able to get hired because I'm 6 months behind in the rat race?
I think it's just people, and I guess it's kind of just like a philosophy of like day-to-day life in like the Western world, that you're kind of always building on, like, you're got to keep building towards something that you're never going to get to. Mm-hmm. Like, you do school for university for your career. The career is this entire process of like, got to move up. Because if we're just going to infinitely go up, because people don't really like to think about the fact that they're going to die. Like, you've only got a limited period of time to be alive. And so in the end, anything you accomplish is going to fade away. It's going to disappear. So the only thing you can really gain, like, I think it's maybe a religious thing that's kind of still, people are hanging on to this concept of like, you've got to work now for this afterlife thing, sacrifice this life for that life. But like, as far as we know, that doesn't exist. Like, I probably just nothingness. So you should maybe think about the fact that you're going to die. And when you think about the fact that you're going to die, it kind of brings this sense of, maybe I should be enjoying the limited time I have to be alive, mm-hmm. and not constantly building for something. There's nothing to build towards, because you're going to die. It's going to disappear.
So a lot more about living in the present as opposed to living in the future, or mm-hmm. living in the past. So just mm-hmm. kind of being more in the present and just being with that present state.
Yeah. So I think that's like, it's slightly unrelated to what we were talking to, but just kind of where my thinking went. Because when you go, like, I definitely don't think you can get like complete fulfillment from traveling, but traveling can help you assess your direction. to get into a better place where you are more fulfilled.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be just traveling in itself is a really enjoyable experience.
Yeah, for sure. Traveling it's just amazing. It's cool because when you're on a big trip or even a smaller trip, micro backpacking, like we talked about in one of our previous episodes, you really don't have to do anything that you don't want to do. The day is all yours. Like carpe diem, seize the day. It's actually a thing. That's actually something that you live by, because you wake up in the morning and it's not, oh, I have to go to work today. I have to get all these things done for somebody else. Otherwise I'm going to lose my job, and then I can't pay my rent, and I'm going to lose my apartment, and then I can't pay my car insurance, and I can't drive my car anymore. It's like, no, I just wake up today and it's like, what do I want to do? It's just very freeing.
Yeah. I think too, in regular life, you do have that like fundamental choice to do anything. Like you could just wake up and sit in your bed. we convince ourselves that we have to do all these things. Whereas traveling, you kind of get this more, you get kind of in tune with this idea that you're the force that's moving your life. Because if you don't decide to do anything, you're just going to sit there. Like you've got to decide to leave the hostel. You've got to decide to leave this town to go to that town. And then you really realize that if you don't decide to do anything, you're not going to do it.
Yeah, that's very true. Like you could just choose to sit in the bed all day and not see anything. I think it's interesting though, because I feel like there is that interest to get out and do things and see things. And when you're not bogged down by all these things that you have to do at work, it's really a lot easier to be in tune with the things that really, you're passionate about or you're really interested in. And then you can, sort of spend your day doing those things, whether or not it's going to a coffee shop and drinking a nice coffee and reading or writing all day, or it's spending your entire day in an art museum, or if it's, running, like
just hanging out with the people at the hostel, hiking, anything. Yeah.
Listening to music, creating music. Like you have this opportunity where you don't have to do anything else. And it really gives you the chance to be like, what do I want to do today? You're free of social pressures. It's not, what do my friends expect me to do today? What do my friends want me to do today? What does my family want me to do today? It's what do I want? And it's such a great way to, outside of seeing the world and all these amazing things that the world has to offer, it's a really great way to get to know yourself. Yeah.
And we've talked about that a bunch. But I think one thing you said about just not having the social pressures, like I think that might be like one of the biggest things. Like you get away from all these like relationships that kind of have taken on this obligation to them, like your work, you've got to be there with all these people. And so you kind of have to worry about what those people are thinking, what they want you to do. Same with like you're in a social circle that you've been in for a while. A sense of fear about not being in that social circle kind of does come up. And then even like family is a big part of that, where you feel like when they're in contact with you that maybe, you've got to do more things. So getting out, you realize instead of being pulled these directions by these people in your life who maybe don't even realize they're pulling you in directions, you have the ability to go whatever direction you want to go, which you do at home anyways.
Yeah, you definitely do at home. I think it's just a lot harder to act on that, because I think there is so much pressure when you're at home from work and friends and family. It's so hard to say no to anyone.
Well, and those things become like you kind of box yourself in your own mind. Like you don't even realize a lot of times when you're afraid, you're afraid and you act, and you don't even realize that you're acting because you're afraid. You wouldn't even say you were afraid.
Yeah. I think it's interesting too, because I've talked to people who are like, I want to travel. Like, it's cool that you and Ryan have done so much traveling. Like, I just can't. And it's sort of like, well, why can't you? Like, being able to do something or not do something is a choice in my mind. It's not you can or can't. It's you're choosing to or you're choosing not to. And so many times it's, all these different excuses. you know, one being what we've already talked about where, well, I can't quit my job. That's not going to look good on my resume. But I think there's also so much fear involved there. It's just fear on so many different levels. Fear of what people are going to think, you know, fear of what's going to happen to your life.
But I think too, it's people deciding not to go do something they want to do. Like maybe a lot of people are a little bit unsatisfied with their current state, see traveling as this cool state of freedom. They've heard friends talk about how it's been a good experience to go for like 4 or 5 months, a year, really long backpacking trips. But maybe the reason that they're held back from doing that is that they're kind of thinking about the purpose of life is this future looking leveling up thing where you go, like we kind of talked about school, university, work, more work, mm-hmm. up the corporate ladder. So if your model of what life's about is that, traveling isn't. It's like, it's clearly not, doesn't fit. It's like, okay, well, I stop moving towards the future. That doesn't work with my model. But like so you kind of have to come to see that your model of life should be enjoyment of life. And then if you're thinking about that, anything that's an enjoyable activity becomes valid, because you're like, if I'm just out here seeking the best life I can have, mm-hmm. then going traveling is obviously, it's a ton of enjoyment, and that in itself is worth doing. But then you can also look at the consequences of going traveling, having this opportunity to assess where you're going in life. And I think from our experience and from like virtually everyone we've talked to, going on a trip for an extended period of time has had, not only have they enjoyed those trips thoroughly, but it's had significant impacts on their ability to enjoy life afterwards. Oh,
100%. I don't think I've talked to anybody who said that, you know, they wouldn't do that over again. They wouldn't take that trip over again. It didn't, you know, change them in a positive way in some way or another.
And not always positive experiences, even negative experiences change you in a positive way as well.
Yeah, I think that you can definitely learn something from, you know, getting your stuff stolen. Like, I think that that's a lesson in and of itself, and it can teach you things like you don't need material items to survive in the world. I think that's a lesson that can be taught.
Why do you think right now is a great time to go traveling?
I think that there's tons of reasons. I mean, the internet is amazing. People always say, oh, I don't have money to travel. There's hundreds of budget not budget airlines, but budget flight websites that you can go on, and you can find super cheap flights to almost anywhere in the world.
And especially right now, because the oil prices seems to have dropped, flight prices seem to be low too.
Yeah, so we can put a few in our show notes, but you know, Skyscanner, Kayak, Cheapo Air, just to name a few, they can help you out with really great return flights. Excuse me. Things like hostelworld.com, we talked about that a lot in our first few episodes. Hostels are all over the world, and they're convenient, they're cheap, they're clean, they're awesome. Like, you don't have to stay in a 5-star hotel and take a first class airplane. Like, you don't have to break the budget to take a trip.
But even beyond that, like a lot of things with the internet, like Airbnb is fairly new. Mm-hmm. And that gives you this access to really cool experiences that you had to go through a lot more work to get into. Go visit someone and stay in their home in a foreign country for a really low price.
Couch surfers.
It's something super easy. Couch surfing.
You can go for free.
And then woofing. And there's Workaway, all sorts of Workaway programs that you can find on the internet now. So you can go travel with like virtually no money because you can work for your accommodation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, in my mind, money isn't an excuse. Just to clarify my cold mumbling. Taking time off work, not really a valid excuse. So I think that if you're sitting out there and you're feeling some sort of uneasiness in your life, or you're, you know, thinking about what you want to do in 2015, make 2015 your year. Like, do something that you've really wanted to do, cross something big off your bucket list, and go out there and find yourself.
Yeah. And it's also, if a main concern is it affecting your career potential, maybe you're not getting satisfaction from your current career, traveling allows you to really analyze what you want to go. It allows you to pursue interests more. And it seems to allow you to create new career opportunities that you didn't even perceive.
100%. To get outside of the small world that you live in on a day-to-day basis, it just opens your eyes to everything else that's out there. And there's so much more. There's so much more out there. And it just is a really great way to expand your views and your perceptions. So I say, buy a ticket. That's my advice.
For 2015?
Yeah. Do you have anything else to add? All right. Check out www.theworldwanders.com for the show notes and links if you're planning to book a flight right now. Email us at theworldwanderspodcast@gmail.com. And thanks for listening.
Bye.